Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Thursday, April 21st. LA Galaxy getting ready for Nashville. First night game under the lights. Lots of flashing lights. I would say first night game, but Tuesday night the lights were on too. But, you know, we're calling it real night game, Nashville. We're going to recap that U.S. Open Cup victory over the San Diego Loyal. Landon Donovan in town. We have some good sound from him. We'll make sure that we'll get to that as well. MLS All-Star announcements, some stats, some other things that are in there. Pupusas. We got a whole bunch of stuff to get to, a whole bunch of things to talk about, and to help me do that, I am so excited. We have been secretly planning this for months. We have been talking about it. If it happened, it was going to happen, and we were like, when it goes, we're going to do it. So please welcome back to the show. We're so excited to have her back. Spectrum SportsNet sideline reporter, Miss Nikki Kay. Nikki, how are you doing?
Oh, Josh, it is my pleasure, my honor to be back. It feels great to be joining Corner of the Galaxy, and I've been listening all season long, all off season long, and really, really stoked to finally be joining you in these virtual studios.
I was going to say, you were like 5 minutes from this current studio, and you had to drive all the way back, and then you scrambled to get there, and I was like, this is ridiculous. But, you know, you and I have been talking for a while. We didn't know if Spectrum was going to get it. We had some fingers crossed that it was going to happen. It did, and now you're back. So, I mean, are you excited to be back? I know you are because you told me, but tell everybody else.
I'm so thrilled. You know, covering this team has been so fun. The Galaxy community, all the fans, it's truly special, and everyone's welcomed me with open arms. You've welcomed me with open arms beginning from the get-go, and have really, truly made covering this group entertaining and enjoyable. And, you know, as we parse through the lingo of Greg Vanney, and as we learn what this team is or isn't capable of, it's kind of fun to see them have some chemistry coming into this season. Right. And I think a more solid foundation than they did last year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was sort of reflecting on that just because I was like, well, you know, we'll talk to Nikki about what this team has done through the first 7 games, and you know what she's seeing and that type of thing. And I was like, you know, I need to see that too. What has this team done? And I feel like they made incremental steps last year, and then instead of resetting and having to make those same steps over again, they just sort of picked up right where they left off. And I feel like not enough people acknowledge the progress that was made from the beginning of last year to sort of where they're at right now. This feels like a different team. And at least to me, what have you seen?
I absolutely agree with you. And I think last year what was lost in the fold was as new players were constantly welcomed in, and then breaks were hit, and then injuries happened. It was like we saw flashes of what they could be, and then it seemed like the team was constantly underachieving after that, when really maybe they overachieved to begin with. Right. So now this season, and you know, I can relate to it coming in, there's a foundation there, right? Like last year I felt like I was coming in, meeting a bunch of new people virtually over Zoom, and kind of getting to know this whole community and this history of this franchise. And the same can be said for a lot of the new players that were brought in. But there's a definite camaraderie around the group of guys, and the fondness with which they speak of each other. It shows a familiarity and a comfort level. And the biggest thing I was speaking with Greg right before last Saturday's match, and just talking to him, and he is now able to demand more, because last year, even though he told us of the style he wanted to implement, it was about culture building, familiarity, getting to know everyone. And now he says, now that that's all in place, I'm able to demand more and ask more of the guys, which I think you'll start seeing as we get into more games in fluidity here.
Yeah, I agree, and you can tell that too just by the way that he's talking to us in the press, that he's demanding more. It has to be more perfect. He doesn't give out the kudos as easily as maybe he did last time. He hypes up guys who do well, but he also expects everyone to do well. So it's not like, oh man, I'm blown away by this guy. It's like, no, I expect this from him, but I'm really glad that he's meeting those levels and that sort of that bar that I'm setting, and the bar has been raised incrementally, but it's being raised, and every game I feel like he raises it just a little bit more. And we're going to talk about the Open Cup game, because I think that's sort of important, just because the lineups that the LA Galaxy put out for this game and sort of how he approached it shows that he's asking for more from the team, not just in the league, but he's going to ask for more in every competition. Every time they get on the field, it's the same sort of requirement. That's what I feel for him whenever I look, or whenever I listen to him.
Yeah, no, and especially you look at the group of guys that he trotted out, on Tuesday, and it's so funny because I think there was some scuttlebutt amongst Galaxy fans, that he started so many starters. But today, when Greg asked about that, he was like, I honestly think that's a good thing, because the two guys who actually did start last game were on Saturday were Julian and Raheem, yeah, Julian and Ra. And he said, Kevin didn't start, Sasha didn't start. And it just goes to show how deep this team can be. And, Nick didn't start, and Eric got some run-in. And I think Ephra didn't start. So it's a true testament to kind of the caliber of talent they've got too deep here.
Yeah, it feels that way. A shout out to Raphael, by the way, gave us a $5 super chat, says, welcome back, Nikki. Looking forward to seeing you on Spectrum again. There you go. So a little super chat. We appreciate that. 1-0 win for the LA Galaxy in the Open Cup. Landon Donovan, San Diego Loyal coming up to Dignity Health Sports Park. Not the most entertaining game. An interesting game, though. A chess sort of match that was playing. And I think that the Loyal, as jacked up as Landon was going to have them, with how they played and how they were determined to continually attack the LA Galaxy and really try to throw off the Galaxy's defense and do those things. I think overall, when you look at, and you mentioned a lot of the people who got some minutes, Eric Zavaleta, 90 minutes in this game. Greg was thankful that he got 90 minutes. He needed 90 minutes. He looked like he had concrete shoes for some of this time. That's okay. You understand that. I think that's fine, and we can understand and put that into perspective to say, okay, Eric needs that time to be comfortable and be ready to play in the games. Nick DePuy played fine. I really liked the young kids with Daniel Aguirre and Jonathan Perez. I thought they were two of the better players on the field, and they're young guys trying to fight for time. Aguirre especially, and Greg talked about him after the game, so calm under pressure, able to turn away from pressure, finds the easy pass, keeps the ball moving, has a little bit of techers in him as well, able to escape and evade whenever he needs to. Dejan Joveljic gets the start, and lots of people have been clamoring for him to be there. Kevin Cabral gets the start and the goal, although I will say this, having watched that goal being scored, Kevin made that goal look extremely hard, even whenever it was supposed to be a tap-in as well. So this is, I think people they always want to pick everything apart. And I feel like in this particular case, in this situation, Kevin, stop being such a negative Nancy. That was the first thing Nikki said whenever we connected. She's like, Kevin was so negative on Monday. He gets that way. He's been traveling. He was probably hungry.
We all need our nap time, Kevin. It's fine.
I need a nap right now. I should warn everybody as well. I have this cough that comes and goes. And so if you see me just pass out sideways, Nikki will take the rest of the show and everybody will be fine. So don't worry about that. But
we got a system in place.
Yeah, there's a sign, a signal, everything. We're good to go. But with this, it was a good win. It's 1-0. Yes, you would have liked it to be 7-0 because it's a USL side. I think Landon's team does a lot of stuff really well. Greg Vanney complimented Landon's side as well, and sort of looking at that. Landon complimented his own side whenever he was done as well, saying, I thought, we pressed them and we made them play. I don't know what more you want from a U.S. Open Cup outside of a coach that says he's going to take this seriously, which Since I've been covering the LA Galaxy, I'm not sure there's been one who said that. So that's something very different and I think important, even though Siggy Schmidt said he was going to take it seriously. I never believed him. Greg Vanney, I believe. And I think that's where this team is headed. And you get this game. I mean, I feel like if you get a 1-0 win, you get an Open Cup, you get the guys the minutes that they need, outside of maybe playing Raheem Edwards a little bit too much, or Julian Araujo, who said he was young today and he can run all the time. It doesn't matter. I have no problems with this. Do you get that feeling that this was perfectly fine and it kept momentum going and everything?
I viewed it with all the similar benefits of a friendly or a scrimmage, right? Where you have significant caliber, intensity, and competition in your game. I think it's wonderful. And I also think, if you're getting these guys, like a Sasha Kljestan, some run, just keeping their legs and game intellect high, it keeps the edges sharp, and I'm all for it. So I applaud Greg Vanney for taking it seriously, and I think it's reinforcing to the whole tournament and the guys who are actually sweating out on the field too. It's good to know that their coach stands behind them and wants to see quality results.
Yeah, and overall, I think that's where you sit there and say, okay, this makes some sense, and that's what it is. I want to get to Greg Vanney, who spoke afterwards, and let's get to his audio here. We're going to hear from Greg a little bit later, too. I have some stuff queued up from the media availability, which Nikki was at today, and I was not, so we're going to get that firsthand, and she can certainly tell us what the vibe was out there. But let's go to Greg Vanney, sort of talking about the competition. I got the question. Damian and I were the main covers, I think, in the press conference. I think it was just Damian and I who talked for most of the time with Greg. And so here is what Greg had to say. I asked him about playing starters because, listen, he's going to say he didn't start starters, which he didn't, outside of Julian Araujo and Raheem Edwards. But Chicharito played in this game. In fact, I think he got almost 30 minutes in this game. So this is not like he didn't play guys. Grandsir played, in this game. They brought guys into the midfield, who are starters. So they got a lot of starters minutes. Whether or not that affects them coming up on Saturday is certainly the question. And if the Galaxy fall flat, it'll be up to Greg Vanney to answer that question. But here's what Greg had to say after the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a competition that we want to be competitive in. It's for us this year. It's about winning trophies. This is an opportunity, so take the game serious. They have a good team. I like their team. I think they do some good things. So you have to respect the opponent. You have to respect the game. Especially if you want to do something in this event. So outside of that, there's some things like at left back we use Rob because we really don't have another left back at the moment. So I didn't want him to. He was never going to play 90. I always had him just kind of slated for 60 and to get him off, but. So that was going to happen anyways. Was trying to get some other guys out. But I felt like by and large we got most of our group off the field. But also the most important thing was winning the game. And so if we get more goals, then maybe guys come out a little bit earlier and we deal with it. But we wanted to win the game. So that was it. So. I'm trying to think of other guys that were in there. It was good to get Eric his first 90 minutes. It was good to get Sash back out with the group and let him lead things. It was good to get Daniel and Johnny minutes, get Dayon, 80 minutes, 75, 80 minutes. These were all positive things. Great for Kevin to get a goal. So there's a lot of positive things that came out of the situation. I think
All right, there we go. We'll cut Greg off there. Never one for a short little soundbite there, Greg. We'll explain it all, which is good, by the way. It gives us lots to talk about. But Delgado played in this game. I was looking through sort of the subs and how it went. Leerdam came into the game. Raveloson came into the game. Delgado came into the game. Chicharito got 13 minutes. Let's see, 13 minutes at the end. Grandsir got about 23 minutes. 23 minutes for Hernandez and Grandsir. So you look at that, and I think he used Tuesday as sort of this is a day we train, and so we might as well let these guys go out there and run and do it. And he used the guys outside of Edwards, which I think he would have switched out. You could have played Leerdam there. Perhaps Leerdam has a bigger role to play coming up on Saturday, however, with Victor Vasquez out, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit as well. So you get those guys, sort of 60 minutes, 90 minutes. Julian Araujo says he's fine to go. There's going to be questions about it, though. If Nashville goes wrong, then it's going to be about Greg Vanney playing some starters on Tuesday night. Greg also mentioned that Tuesday night is different than Wednesday night. And if it was Wednesday night, he may have had something different to do as well. So a lot of different things sort of placed in there for this. But I had no problems with it. I thought the Galaxy, if you looked at the expected goals, Nikki, the Galaxy had over 2.1, I think, expected goals. So the one goal, probably not great, but I think Alvarez missed a pretty good shot a couple times in there. And then the leader sort of in expected goals was Kevin Cabral. And as much maligned as Kevin Cabral is, and as much stick as he gets, he was the one who was creating in this game. 1.21 expected goals for him. Grandsir only came in at the end of the game and got 0.33 expected goals. You sort of look at this, Efrain Alvarez with 0.16, but he was one of the key sort of offensive makers in this. So I think the Galaxy got what they wanted out of it. I'm just not sure, outside of if they would have gotten paired with an MLS team coming up next, I would be more concerned sort of about how they're going to rotate through all this stuff. But I think that they got about as favorable a matchup as they sort of want. So overall, we're good, right? You take that win and you shuffle it.
And I do want to say something positive on the note of Kevin Cabral, especially because another thing that Greg's been saying, and right, I think we've noticed this in the leash, the long rope he's been given from last season to now in terms of building his confidence as a young player. But what Greg sees in his game right now, as where it stands as a member of this team, is what he's doing throughout the course of the entire 90, or however long he gets on the field, in staying connected to everything that's going on the pitch. It's what he's struggling with right now, is that final action and following through and having that confidence. So if this one goal, and I know we've said it before, seeing it hit the back of the net, what it can do, but it's still a positive, because Greg sees Sam and Kevin is very similar in terms of the positives they bring, but both in different areas. Sam's got the finishing capability, but he doesn't stay as connected to the group in terms of making the runs and doing things to bring the game forward. So I think if that's one thing to kind of add in another notch in Kevin's belt and maybe boost that confidence a little bit more, it's a good takeaway.
Yeah, it's not bad. I thought that one of the things in the chat room was talking about was Dayon and Dayon getting minutes, and that's important for him. As much as people want Dayon to play more than Kevin Cabral, I constantly remind everybody, I think every podcast now, they play two different positions, and Greg uses them in two different ways. And so for Joveljic to get time, he is more of a Chicharito replacement than he is a Kevin Cabral replacement. So in this game, you got to see him as the lone striker playing up there, doing things. I thought he was completely underserved in this game. If you want to talk about a guy who probably should have had maybe 2 goals, it was probably Dayon. He was making good runs. He was not getting good service. And I think that's probably a mechanism of just the players that they had on the field and trying to be this cohesive unit, but they haven't really played together that much in this particular formation, or at least not with this personnel all around him. So it didn't click, and he was frustrated. But he ends up getting the assist with Cabral scoring. And so there's something there. So for me, Dayon, I think, played fine. I would just like to see him get a little more service in a lot of these things. Cabral was fine. Again, on the goal, he takes an open net basically and toe poked it off the post and then finished his own rebound. That's fun as well. So that's always an interesting way to do it. Greg was like, "Oh, well, it's good to get him on the board." I'm like, "But is it still good if he missed the first one and then he set the second one?" Is that
Josh? We're a firm believer in second chances on this podcast. Come on now.
Hey, he scored. And I think that's the big takeaway for this. So, I mean, overall, Galaxy do, I think, exactly what they needed to do. They have enough time. One of the other points I want to make is Greg said he wanted to really focus on getting these guys their first 3 games in a week, right? They haven't done that. It's going to be coming up. The schedule is getting busier. And so he was like, this is a way for them to remember sort of how 3 games in a week works and let them sort of, prepare for that, play, and then be able to recover and have that extra day. Playing on a Tuesday versus playing on a Wednesday is a big deal. We always talk about how Wednesdays are usually the peak, sort of as hard as they work during the week. So this time they play Tuesday, they do recovery on Wednesday. Thursday is a little ramp up again, which was today. And so they got a little bit of a workout. This is probably the hardest they'll work until they play the game on Saturday, because Friday's a little bit lower, Saturday's walkthrough. Usually that's how that all works. So that's what we see for all of these things in sort of how they do it. So I think he has a plan. He worked his plan. We plan our work and work our plan. He did that. Now he has to see if that pays off against Nashville, because that's going to be sort of the measuring stick on this. If things go wrong in Nashville and the team looks gassed, there's going to be questions. And so I'm fine. I think they did well. Now let's sort of see how that rolls on for the next one. And the good news is that we already know where and who the LA Galaxy will be playing in the round of 32 as well. So the U.S. Open Cup had their draw this morning. LAFC, Portland, Cal United Strikers, and the LA Galaxy put into the same division. They chose the hosts and they chose the away teams. The LA Galaxy will travel to Cal United Strikers FC. They play at the Great Park at the the Championship Soccer Stadium, I think is what they call it there. And that holds about 5,000 people. I'm going to tell you right now, they put out a press release, or the LA Galaxy put out a press release, and they said ticket information will be coming later, and it won't be coming for us. It's going to come from Cal United Strikers. So if you're interested in going to this game, again, limited attendance, I think about 5,000, possibly expandable to 7,000 if I remember correctly, because there's some open grass areas where they can sort of fill in more people if they want, that type of thing. Then you're going to want to follow Cal United Strikers on Twitter, and like I think some people were signing up for their emails and doing all that, making sure that they could get tickets for that. And that game will be coming up on May 11th. It's 7:30 p.m. It's a Wednesday night down in the OC, so not too far away from my house for once. So I actually get to go down there, and I'll try to cover that game. It's a great field. Have you been down there? Have you been down to that little soccer stadium?
That sounds awesome.
It is like the coolest little stadium. I love it. 5,000. I always wish the Galaxy, and this everybody knows this, the Galaxy should build like a 5,000 seat stadium out in front of the stadium. And do like and get a women's team that plays in there. Maybe like make it 8,000 or 9,000. Get a women's team that plays there. Play Galaxy 2 games in the stadium. Like you can play Open Cup games in that stadium if you want to do it.
I'm on board, Josh. Let's get that petition signed. All
right, good. I'm glad everybody's on board with that. So that's what's coming up. Just the schedule's going around now. It's also worth noting that that there is another draw after this. We keep going, is there going to be a bracket? So the winner of the Galaxy game will play the winner of the LAFC and Portland game. No, they will go back into another regional draw in the round of 16. It's the final draw. That's it. So they will draw one more time, and then I think they draw like for home field all the way into the final, and like they flip coins and do stuff. So it's I don't know if anybody watched the draw this morning, because of course crazy people watch a U.S. Open Cup draw on a Thursday morning at like 9:30 or whatever time it was. And so that's where we're at. You can watch that draw take place. So after this next round, should the LA Galaxy be victorious over Cal United Strikers, and I would like to remind everybody, Cal United Strikers is a NISA team, right? The National Independent Soccer Association, so third division of soccer. There are 10 professional teams in NISA. There's 11 USL League Ones. That's also third division, right? USL Championship has 27 teams. Major League Soccer has 28 teams. So NISA, I think they're the last NISA team, but they may not be. There may be one other NISA team in there. So Cal United Strikers in the third division of U.S. soccer, which means that the LA Galaxy, the big team, gets to go travel down to the little stadium, and that makes it so much more exciting for me. That's
like good. In Ted Lasso, right? When
That's exactly what it is. I mean, and I was talking to Kevin about this because we were talking about San Diego coming in, and I said, it would be a better story if the LA Galaxy had to go down and play San Diego. Yep. Like, that's the better story. So now you got the better story, which is the LA Galaxy going to play at this third division U.S. soccer side in order to advance into the round of 16. I think 5 games from here on out wins you a U.S. Open Cup and gets you an automatic spot in the CONCACAF Champions League.
That's awesome.
So people will say that this is the easiest way into the CONCACAF Champions League. And it is, as long as you get all of the coin tosses to go your way. Any away games lessen your chance of winning. So the LA Galaxy got the best away game. So if they just have luck from here on out and get all home games, they have a very good chance of winning a U.S. Open Cup.
Wood.
All right, good. I'm glad we got through that. So wanted to talk about that. One of the other things that I think is pretty interesting is that they announced today the All-Star game will be held in Minnesota. They're doing a rematch, Nikki. I'm not sure anybody asked for the rematch, but they're going to do it anyway. It is going to be Liga MX again against the MLS All-Stars in Minnesota, and they put Chicharito front and center.
Imagine that.
I mean, big surprise, right? It was either him or Vela, and from what we understand, Vela's contract extension with LAFC looks like it's going to go through, but they probably didn't want to put him on there in case he didn't re-sign, right?
So, what a look. Yeah.
So there's the All-Star game coming up. I'm not sure anybody cares about this, but I feel like it has a bigger worldwide pull than actual like MLS. But do you care about the All-Star game?
All-Star games, have become kind of a bummer by how they're treated by the actual stars who are selected to play in them, right? So often you see the big names opting out. I guess we'll have to see who's tabbed in it and who's actually going to play in it. If you tell me, on any given day, LeBron James is playing and so is Joel Embiid in, an NBA All-Star game, then the allure is there. But, sometimes the leagues schedule the All-Star games in the midst of a weird run, that not everyone's healthy for, not everyone's available for it. Yeah, so I go back and forth. I like the notion. It reminds me of like the Greek gods all teaming up, or Captain America and his crew. But so often it's been kind of failing as what it's intended to be.
I have always said this, and our stance on this show has been this, and I think it needs adjustment. And I think Chris Tucker, my buddy, he kind of provided the adjustment that I think is fair. If there is financial incentive for the players to go to the All-Star game, then I am all for any LA Galaxy player going to play in the All-Star game. If there's no financial incentive, if they don't get a bonus or nothing like that, and it's not really important to them, then I hope none of the LA Galaxy players go to the All-Star game. I think if you're a diehard fan, there's no way you want your team and your guys playing in a game that doesn't mean anything in the middle of the season. Everybody's already upset a little bit about the SoFi Cup that's coming up and the 4 teams that are played there and all that fun stuff that's sort of going to happen. Jonathan Bond was talking about. What did Jonathan Bond? He said his mom was going to that game today.
Yeah. I asked him, has his mother gotten to watch any of his games live yet? And he said, not yet, but August she's coming out for a couple and actually going to be able to catch the one in SoFi. So, and he was warned like, hey, that might be a rowdy crowd to bring her into, but if she's used to any of what's going on in the United Kingdom, in the level of intensity from the fans at their match or supporters at their matches, I'm sure she'll be fine. Yeah,
I also imagine she's going to get like VIP tickets too. I mean, she's not going to be sitting up in the nosebleeds,
No.
There were tickets for like $455. I imagine those ones will still be open, so that's where she'll sit. They'll give her those tickets, and she'll be great. So, I like the notion of an All-Star game. I just wish there was a time to play it where it didn't impact a schedule or anything else. And as we know, if you refuse to play in the All-Star game, they automatically make you miss the next league game as well. So there's like punishment in there for you not to. That's the Zlatan punishment rule.
That's wild. It's wild. But I mean, I understand it's like the league trying to, get some steam behind what it's created, but it signifies a faulty system to begin with.
Yeah, the commercial underground goes. Well, maybe Jonathan Klinsman or maybe Jonathan Bond won't be playing because Jonathan Klinsman will be. So you're going to start a B team against that game, right? Because it's in the middle of the week, and all that fun stuff. I did find the Open Cup game that is going to be added also adds another sort of layer to what May is going to look like. So now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in May coming up for the LA Galaxy. And so they'll be away to Austin on May 8th and then come back and have to play 3 days later against Cal United. Greg Vanney mentioned that a little bit, saying it's in the middle of a pretty decent run for the LA Galaxy. And then 3 days later, again, the LA Galaxy will be hosting FC Dallas at Dignity Health Sports Park. I'm glad it wasn't sandwiched between 2 away games. That makes it a little bit better that they come back and they're able to do that. But that's going to be, I'm starting to look at that May schedule. All the teams that are MLS teams, I think, are above the line, above the playoffs that they're going to be playing. And they play Austin twice in the month of May. So there's a lot of games coming for this team. And I think maybe Greg was right to have played 3 games, to sort of make those guys play 3 games and sort of be like, get used to this because this is what's going to happen.
And Josh, I do have to say, like, seeing those names, it's really refreshing and fun because I think we've got those 3 games in the middle of May there on Spectrum. They're not listed because I think that might have been out before the deal has been official. But it's really fun to see those team names because I can't tell you how many games we called from Rio Tinto Stadium last like between Vancouver and Real Salt Lake. It felt like I was like, oh, here we go, another draw in Utah, But so it's kind of fun seeing the caliber of opponents, but like you said, Austin in there a couple of times, mixed up early. Wow, they're really going Texas two-step in all through the month of May.
Yeah, it is all Texas all in May.
Minnesota, yeah.
Yeah, Texas and one game in Minnesota. So basically, it's Austin, it's Dallas, it's Houston, it's Austin again, and there's a Minnesota game in the dead center of the month as well. So that's a tough schedule. And as we look at April as well, just to sort of finish everything up, the LA Galaxy are very close, Nikki, to having a very, very good April. You go up and you start this game,
Gosh,
but it's,
don't jinx it.
I'm just,
Come on.
I can't. I am not. I am not able to jinx the LA Galaxy. That is not. I refuse to believe that. So I do it all the time. Basically, everybody knows I jinx them all the time.
Oh, there's Real Salt Lake. I knew we were too
right. And they're having problems right now, just in terms. They just got knocked out of the U.S. Open Cup by a lower division team. Chicago got knocked out of the U.S. Open Cup by a lower division team. There's been some MLS teams who have laid in the egg whenever it came to some of this. Austin got knocked out by San Antonio FC, San Antonio USL side, Austin and MLS side. So the cup sets were many over the weekend and or I should say over this midweek sort of span. And so we're seeing that. But I mean, also, I think when you look at those teams, they also prioritized MLS play most of the time with saying, listen, the U.S. Open Cup's great, but I'm not. It's not what we're focused on. Whereas Greg Vanney said we're focused on winning on this. I always think that's interesting whenever you have coaches that flat out say, we know Seattle always takes it seriously, right? We know Portland always takes it seriously. There's some teams that just take U.S. Open Cup seriously and you expect them to. And we may now have to Rolodex the LA Galaxy into that list of teams that quote unquote take it seriously.
I think it's respectable, and it also goes under the old adage, like, why would you want to practice anything less than your best, right? It just it doesn't set a standard of championship mindset, being obsessive with it. So I'm all for it.
It's the only thing I ever say is that you can only put so many minutes on these legs, right? And I think especially when you look at Chicharito, you can only put so many minutes on his legs. He's especially one. Costa didn't play in this game at all because he's still coming back, and you're like, no, he's not going to play a U.S. Open Cup game, not yet. Maybe in the later stages he could do that, but he's not there for that. So there's some guys like Victor Vasquez, even if he was healthy, which he's not, he wouldn't have played in the U.S. Open Cup game because you're trying to limit the minutes. But they're only humans. And I feel like everybody's always like, well, they're professional athletes. They get tired. 34 plus games whenever you add in U.S. Open Cup, this Leagues Cup showcase that they're going to play as well. And then you go into playoffs and everything else. That adds up. Those miles add up. The miles on the airplanes add up. All that stuff adds up. And eventually you can have guys that hit the wall. So that's the only thing I think everybody should guard. But you cover a bunch of sports. You see that, though, like whenever the Lakers have back-to-backs. And you see that, whenever the Dodgers are, on a 5-game road swing and come back and they're exhausted, you can see the difference in intensity.
And that's why we applaud the youth of Julian Araujo, right? But I do think also, soccer in general is pretty underestimated. I think from the average sports fan who likes to look at soccer from afar and look at people taking flops and the drama associated with it, what's really undersold is the athleticism and the endurance you have to run what they do in a day and to play through contact and have tactical awareness all the time. Yeah,
again, somebody said, all-star games are great for non-contact sports. Whenever there's a contact sport, soccer's definitely a contact sport. Whenever there's a contact sport, it's less so. It's like the NHL All-Star game ends 14-12 because nobody wants to check each other because they don't want to hurt each other in an All-Star game. So then it's not really the NBA All-Star game is like 137 to 132, right? Nobody wants to play defense. The Pro Bowl game at least is outside of the regular season and is sort of at the end. But again, nobody plays defense. Nobody really hits each other in the whole deal. So the only game that ever is sort of contested in any of these is usually baseball, where it's like, oh, maybe that's a thing. And they really try to make it a thing in baseball as well. But everybody just watches the home run derby, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Absolutely. Amen. I mean, you do get into, the debates. Like I remember you talking about Clayton Kershaw. It's like, okay, 80 pitches. What's 20 more? Yeah, I know. I know we're not going to go on.
I'm so angry about that.
I know.
And listeners know this. I grew up playing baseball. That was my main sport. So I played soccer all the way from the time I was 5 all the way through high school, that type of thing. But in baseball, I actually tried to walk on at Arizona State, which never was going to happen because I didn't really want to do it.
You tried. You put yourself out there.
I don't know if I really did. Having worked in the real world for as long as I have now, I would have much rather played a game. But you didn't know that at the time, so I don't know how some of these kids are way more mature than I was, certainly. But I played baseball, so I get that game. I understand it. I played soccer as well, but at a higher level was baseball. And so for me, I'm like, if I have a no-hitter, you are not going to pull me off that mound. And it's like, I feel like in some ways soccer doesn't have an equivalent to that, right? There's no like, oh, well, I'm not going to pull you, like, oh, do I pull you out whenever you could get a hat trick? I mean, maybe if you're going to reach like a milestone, like you're going to score 1,000 goals and you already have 1 goal in the day and you're like, I just need 10 more minutes and there's all these chances and you've been really close. It's like, then I'm not coming off the field. No, you can't sub me, that type of thing. But it's really hard to sort of put that into a baseball perspective. But I just can't imagine, somebody not wanting to be in that position.
And I think what it really boils down to at, a very caveman level is like analytics ruining our games, right? Like, is it taking away the magic? Because that magic is, you only have 20 plus of those in the entire sports history. Let them freaking go for it, yeah.
I mean, and that's a great soccer segue as well, just in terms of the analytics and how that sort of plays into it and just how much of that is important. Well, I always argue that analytics are not the be all end all, but if you're not using them, I feel like you're behind and you're not paying attention to all the information you could. But when analytics tells you something, I always look at, stats after a game and you look at something, you're like, I didn't realize that. Let me go watch that again and see if I see that in it. It's like, no, I don't. I think in the Chicago game, Chicago had 22 crosses. And it wasn't something that registered in my head, but whenever you go back and watch it, you're like, there were a ton of defensive plays in that game to clear the ball, to keep the ball out of danger. I think there were 6 corners in there as well. There were probably 8 to 10 set pieces. When you start adding all that, that's like 30 or 40 chances the LA Galaxy had to either clear the ball, get rid of the ball, all those different things, and they did it. And that changes my opinion of watching that sleepy game. Because it wasn't the best game.
Completely on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, you got to talk to Jonathan Bond afterwards. I thought he said the most intuitive thing. I don't think we covered it on Monday, and we should have. Which was, he said last year, I don't know that we win this game. Right? I don't know that last year's team does that. What do you see? Does that make you feel a difference from the team?
I completely see that, and he's very frank. He doesn't sugarcoat things. I mean, he's very complimentary when he feels the compliments are deserved. And I got a chance to kind of follow up with that logic. That was, you can tell when he's fired up, and he was feeling some sort of way right in the mix after that draw in Chicago. So following up on that with him today, I was like, do you feel on a whole that this team's defense and the mindset to defend is a lot more present and engaged than it was last year? He said, absolutely, we've grown in that aspect. And who said it in a much more blunt way was Derek Williams, as an Irishman might too.
Right.
He said, at the beginning of the season, Greg Vanney told us if we don't defend, we don't got a place on this roster. So right. I think that might have lit a fire under their cleats, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, and again, we talk about incrementally. That's not something that I think he goes out and says, and certainly just by the way that the guys have reacted to that statement. That's not something that happened last year. And it's not like he wasn't emphasizing defense. We know he was because we talked to him about it. But he was like, first year, I can't give him too much. I got to do what I need to do. The whole deal. And then this year, it's like, no. This is a standard. Either you meet it or you don't play. And I think Greg is a guy who's like, I'll play with 11 players. I don't care how many guys are on this roster. I need 11 guys who want to compete. And you know what? We'll play the whole year with 11 guys if that's all I can find. That's the sort of feeling I'm starting to get. That was not the feeling last year. Yeah. Last year was a lot more leeway. Yep. Absolutely. And I do think what's getting lost right now, too, in what I wanted to scream into my headphones when listening to Kevin on the podcast is like when you understand that it begins with defending, right? Greg also views Jonathan Bond as the first line of the Galaxy's attack, right? So it's like you think of this whole foundation being in place and how can they continue to build off of that. And as that core becomes stronger, they're able to move the ball forward, which is like what you were saying. The one thing it was a little bit, you said there could have been more of in Chicago, but the base stayed sturdy, right? It's like, okay, that passed the first test. And so, fans might be frustrated that they're not seeing flashier offense, but the connectedness of this team is more elevated than it was last year, and I think that's a really good sign moving forward.
Yeah, it feels that way. Let's go over the standings here in the Eastern Conference. It's the Philadelphia Union, who are the cream of the crop in Major League Soccer. 2.29 points per game, 16 points so far, 7 games played. They're 5-1-1. Jim Curtin's side, again, sort of picking up where they left off last year. Certainly a lot of momentum getting forward. But one of the teams the Galaxy struggled with, lost at home, was Orlando City. Orlando has started to slowly rise to the top. They were a little more mid-table, and then they've had some good wins, some road wins, some road draws, and they've sort of managed to keep that momentum going for them as well. So they're up at 14 points. The New York Red Bulls, who the LA Galaxy played in preseason, and I was convinced would be a very, very bad team this year, are in third place. So it shows you how much the preseason means, or how good I am at identifying talent whenever we're watching. So Red Bulls at 3, Atlanta at 4, which is an interesting. Brad Guzan with a season-ending injury in Atlanta. Toronto and Bob Bradley's side at 5, Montreal at 6, Chicago at 7. Chicago is going to be one of those like mid-table teams that we've sort of expected here for a little bit. I just don't know if they're going to score any goals or do it. I mean, Ezra is going to get them back to not being like wooden spoon territory, Nikki, but I don't know that he's going to have them, in a playoff position come the end of the year. Christian Miles called it anti-soccer, and I feel like that's kind of what we saw whenever we saw the Galaxy play Chicago.
Hey, it's like just keep the oars in the water. I think that's what they're worried about right now. Don't have to be going in any direction, but keep stroking.
I was going to just keep swimming. Swimming. And that's sort of where Chicago is. We go into the Western Conference right now. LAFC at the top with 16 points, 2.29 points per game. Then it's Austin. As we said, LA Galaxy going to play Austin twice coming up here in May, so something to watch there at 14 points. LA Galaxy in third place, 1.86 points per game. 4-2-1 getting their first draw against Chicago. Then it's Dallas at 4, Houston at 5, Salt Lake at 6, and Minnesota at 7. Again, all of the teams the LA Galaxy play coming up in May are all above the line right now. Minnesota just hanging in there, and their team coming up this weekend, Nashville, sits at number 8 with 11 points, so tied with Minnesota. But the important thing to remember about Nashville, we're going to start talking about Nashville here in a second. The important thing to remember about Nashville is that they have not played a single home game yet. So any of these points that they're picking up now, you sort of have to grade on a curve. If you're supposed to, you have a better chance of winning at home. Everybody knows that, especially Major League Soccer. Home field advantage is a real thing. And so far, Nashville hasn't had that, but yet they still have 11 points and they're just below the playoff line. That should mean something at the end where they're going to play at home and probably get more wins than they're getting right now. So something to sort of watch as we go forward. And then if we look at Supporter Shield here real quick, it's LAFC and Philadelphia sort of tied up there at the top. Austin at number 3, and then Orlando at number 4, Galaxy at number 5. Montreal rounds it out. We do the top 14 because that cuts everything in half. So Montreal, Toronto, Nashville, Atlanta, Minnesota, New York, Salt Lake, Houston, Dallas, all in that upper 50% of Major League Soccer. So Nikki, you excited though? Because we have a Spectrum game coming up against Nashville. It's under the lights. This feels like it's the big time. It's time to go.
I love it. There's nothing like being at live games, and especially at Dignity Health Sports Park. And when you say under the bright lights, it's a tried and true tradition. Josh, is no matter how predictable those cannons and fireworks are during the national anthem, I will always jump.
I jump.
Because that is right about then. I am locked in on memorizing every word I'm saying for my open hit. And even though I know the national anthem's coming, I'm reciting those lines over and over in my head. I'm taken away by the beauty of the spectacle, and then come the fireworks, and she gone.
Yeah, it happens. Well, now they do the countdown one as well, right? So they do the count. There's like 10, 9, 8, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. They're counting down, boom, and it's like, and then I jump, and I'm like, okay, I'm not ready for that one yet. That's
it's a wake up call. You get some coffee, you get a little jolt, and you're ready to rumble.
Yeah, that's right. $10 super chat from Patrick. Thanks, Patrick. The show is kicking butt. I always change those. As usual, great guest host, great conversation. Keep up the good work, folks. By the way, I got Nikki a polo for a Corner of the Galaxy polo. That's how much we're expecting you to be on this year. They're coming.
Ready.
They're coming. And then next time we'll both wear our polos when we come on there. We'll look fancy. Like we're supposed to, like.
We got to do a live one, a midweek live one. I'm so here for it.
That was what Nikki said. She goes, "Can't we do this from like, a brewery or something?"
Like a cantina. I could use a margarita while chatting about football. We're good.
That it makes 100. I'm in. I like that. There's actually there's some options I think for us in Long Beach possibly that would make a ton of sense. So maybe we'll work on stuff. I always say it has to sort of be an off week for the Galaxy, so that way people can go and attend and have some fun and not pay attention. But it's also fun to sort of do it before games or around games and that way as well. So we'll certainly do that. But thanks for that, Patrick. The big news coming up. Obviously, the LA Galaxy facing off against Nashville, 7:30 p.m. 7:38 p.m. kickoff time, because that's what Spectrum does. Puts it at 8 minutes after 7:30. So anytime there's a game on Spectrum, you can expect it 7:38 or an 8 minute after the official quote-unquote start time is when that goes. I try to give everybody the formula, Nikki, but I spend most of my afternoon telling people what time the game is going to start.
I have to text my parents every morning I'm on TV. I am at, normally I give them a 2 minute, I tell them 2 minutes earlier than I actually am.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. So I'm tried and true with the hit time. I know now when they're texting me at 7:00, you're not on. Not yet.
I'm coming, Mom and Dad. I promise. We all have those friends that you have to lie about start times to. It's like, hey, so we're all going to be there at 7:30, and then they text you at 7:45, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. I'll be there in like 15 minutes. They're like, that's okay. The reservation was at 8 anyway. We knew you would show up.
I'm one of those friends, admittedly.
That's good. Okay, next time I'm just going to tell you the show starts at 7:30 then, and then that'll make sure that we do that. So, but obviously this game coming up. The other big news is, and I want to make sure everybody knows, AFJA and the Pupusas have been moved again. So they are going to be the southwest side of things as well, near the Southwest game and the Team LA store. So pay attention to that if you want your pupusas. And then, Nikki, they threw me for a curve. I don't even know. I asked them where my hat was, but they came up with pupusas. It says it's a hat, and it says pupusas, and it says AFJA on it. And I said, so what time do I come by to pick up my hat? I feel like I've earned it at this point. So
that's an awesome hat.
Isn't that the cool? I want that hat.
Is there the quasar on it too?
Yeah, I think there's a little quasar next to the bird. Yes, as there should be. Listen, normally I'm a guy who's like, hey, if you give me something, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, the whole deal. But I need that hat, and they better give me that hat. That I think that I would wear that almost every show if they gave that to me.
I need some pupusas merch. I'll probably rep it.
It's something I didn't know I needed, but now that I know it exists, I have to have it. It's kind of like
use that $10 bonus from Patrick there to buy some more pupusas.
By the way, and they're expensive, and we've talked about the reason that they are expensive, but it goes to a good cause, so I don't care. The only other thing that I am missing in this studio, and I think maybe you're the person who can steal it for me, is the ball racks. You know the ball racks they put behind the goals and they put the balls. Yeah. I need those, and nobody will give me.
Clandestine.
Just stick it under your arm and walk. I
think would be even cooler is, how the ones they have on the sidelines, right, which just hold a singular ball.
Right, that's all I want. I just want the ones that hold the singular ball. Yeah. I need one, because I think the greatest ever thing that ever happened to soccer is in the Leagues Cup they started mandating ball racks. Like there was a line in there that says there must be these ball racks, and I'm like, I need those ball racks. I'm a huge ball rack fan.
It makes it look like a Quidditch match to me. I'm like, oh wow, we've got all sorts of, this is wild.
Yes, I need a shirt that says I love ball racks, because I would wear that as well. I don't know how people would take that, but that is what I'm expecting. By the way, Patrick says I expect that money is used to buy pupusas, so that's good. 7:38 is the kickoff time. LA Galaxy versus Nashville. First meeting ever. I was like, let me go and look and see how these two teams have played against each other. Oh, wait, they haven't. A good friend of the show, Pam, texted me before the Chicago game, and I think DC United was playing Miami or one of the other. Oh, Charlotte. They were playing Charlotte, and they played Charlotte, and DC United was the first team to ever play all MLS teams. And Pam texted me and she goes, how are the Galaxy not on this list? I'm like, I don't know. And then as I was looking this up, I'm like, they haven't played Nashville.
Wow.
They've never played Nashville. So that's why they weren't.
History.
Right. So the big deal here, obviously, first time they're meeting, the fact they're in the Western Conference that they'll meet twice. And then the other, like the third big deal here is, of course, Big Dave Romney, who was a fixture for the LA Galaxy for so many years, is a highlight on Nashville's defense. And so he'll be back for the first time since going to Nashville as well, which has been a couple years. So that'll sort of be fun to watch. And we'll talk about Dave here in a little bit too, because Dave has a nasty habit of being involved in goal scoring plays. And so especially if you're a former LA Galaxy player, everybody knows what that means. He'll score 3 or 4 probably. So if we look at Nashville though, and what they've done, again, all away games. So they're into their 8th game coming up. This is 8 straight away games. They beat Seattle the opening weekend. They drew with Minnesota away. They lost to Dallas 2-0. They lost to Salt Lake 2-1. They beat Columbus. They beat Sporting Kansas City. They drew with San Jose. So you're sort of looking at how this goes. And if you look at the last 5 games for these two teams, they're exactly the same. Their records are exactly the same. When they happened were exactly the same. Like I can look at this and say last 5 games, 2-2-1, both are 2-2-1. Whenever you look at the last time they both won, it was both on April 9th against, they won against Sporting Kansas City. The LA Galaxy won against LAFC. The last time they lost, they both lost on the same day, which was, on March 19th. So there's like so many similarities between these teams that it feels a little spooky. And the fact that they haven't played each other, I think this is going to be probably one of the better matchups that we have seen with the LA Galaxy. LA Galaxy a little more offensive balance, Nikki. Nashville probably a little more defensive balance, but not as defensive as they have been. So I don't know. Super interesting. What did you hear from Greg and everybody? What were they talking about?
Well, it sounds like the stars are aligning, Josh. Very cosmic forces coming into Saturday's game. I got the chance to speak with Mark Delgado today, too, in a one-on-one. And first of all, he clarified it's Mark, not Marky.
Of course it is, because he's a grown man, Nikki, and we all know that. It's Mark Delgado, correct.
But does Greg call him Marky?
You know what? How like if you have a little brother or if
paternal, yeah.
That's what that is. So he's known him since he was Marky.
Yeah, they've been together for such a long time. So, I think what you're going to want to see from the Galaxy, especially, is staying connected through the midfield. And that was something Greg was emphasizing heading into Chicago's match, but a little bit impossible to maintain because of the quality of field that Chicago laid out there. But, they know that Nashville has a very defensive, history. But I think if there's anyone to break it, it's going to be the dashing runs of our poacher, Chicharito. And hopefully we see some other guys get involved there too. I'd love to see Douglas Costa get a little bit more involved. He seems like he's finding his rhythm. And then, Kevin in terms of what he can bring in terms of stretching. But I'm calling Efrain Alvarez coming in with the magic touch to unsettle Nashville, because that's what we've seen the magic man do time and time again in these battles.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was talking about Dave Romney. I went back and watched some of the highlights from the last 2 games. Dave Romney has the long throw-in, which the LA Galaxy fans are familiar with, but Nashville scores off that long throw-in a lot, especially using CJ Sapong up top and sort of getting his head involved in a lot of things. And so when we go back and look at these lineups, I know Greg talked about Mukhtar. I know he talked about Leal. Nobody mentioned Sapong, but Sapong is part of that top 3 that they mention whenever it sort of comes into this. The old Nashville teams, Nikki, were very defensive, and they rarely came out of their shell except in sort of extreme counterattack moves, and they were successful in doing that. Gary Smith has sort of this defensive mind that works really well, and he knows sort of how to be stable on defense and not give away too many chances. Well, this year's a little different. With Mukhtar, with Leal, with Sapong sort of in there, and with Godoy as well in the center, or even Davis in the center, they are capable of buildups. They are capable of moving forward and scoring goals. And so when we look at these things, it's important to sort of say as sort of unbalanced as the Galaxy can be sometimes being more offensive, that this Nashville team is not just solely defensive. And I think Nashville's a lot more balanced than they have been in the past, and they've been causing people a lot of problems with that. They can easily score a goal, and Mukhtar, if you go back, watch any of the highlights, unbelievably talented and technical in small spaces, capable of taking 2-on-1 and 1-on-1s very easily. He creates space, he creates options, and if you leave him alone, he'll just run down the center of the field and score. So there has to be sort of this LA Galaxy midfield, which I think we saw in the first maybe 4 games, but maybe we haven't seen the last 3 games sort of take over. Mark Delgado is extremely important in this to me. Raveloson is there, and then without Victor Vasquez. Does Leerdam reprise his role? Is Greg Vanney a little more defensive like he was in Chicago, and Leerdam comes in as that defensive midfield role? I think those are all really interesting things to sort of try to figure out how that chess match is going to go. And I think it was Jonathan Bond who was talking and saying today, he said, yes, it's about them, but it's about us too. How do we want to play, and how do we want to make it more difficult for them to sort of play? So that's to me, this is one of the most exciting matches I think I've seen here from an LA Galaxy perspective, just because there's some real balance in both of these teams. And so how does that play out?
Absolutely. And I think you also want to see the Galaxy continue their focus and their execution on defending set plays as well. I think that was a huge takeaway from Chicago, because last year we knew that was one of the weaknesses of this team. So I think that really points to a team that has grown comfortable and familiar with each other, right? And the communication is there. So I am very excited to see, hopefully the defense continues to stay elevated and locked in and engaged, but then you also see that build up in the attack as well. And like we both mentioned, it's going to live through that midfield in terms of setting plays up.
Let's hear from Greg Vanney. He talked about Nashville today. John in the chat room, by the way, says, am I going to post the presser from today? Yes, I will, but probably not until tomorrow morning. So I'll get that up on YouTube, and so everybody can go through that, but it'll probably be tomorrow morning. But here is Greg Vanney speaking today about what he expects from Nashville. A little long, but I think worth the listen. So here he is.
Yeah, I mean, really stingy group. I mean, that's been the biggest thing, is they have a foundation of hard work, and they defend together. They don't give up much. This year's been hard for them because they're on the road so many games at the beginning of the year is always a challenge for everybody. But over the years, they've continued to add to their group. I mean, they've gotten a lot out of their budget. They've gotten players who have played every bit of their ability, and then they've added players like Mukhtar and Leal, who are special players who really, I think, generate their attacks and really get things going when they're in the counterattack, or when those guys pick up the ball facing the goal. They're a handful. But I think by and large they're really organized, and everybody understands their role, and they fulfill their role for 90 minutes, and that's a hard team to beat no matter what. And like I said, they tend to play with 5 in the back, which sometimes can just create this wall that you can't get through, especially with the size of their 3 center backs that make it tough in front of the goal. So the key is to try to move those guys, clear some of those spaces, try to open up some opportunities to finish, and then you got to manage the 2 guys in transition, and always know where Sapong or the striker is, because those guys are obviously proven to put things in the back of the net. But the 2, Leal and Mukhtar, are guys who create a lot for them.
All right, there you go. A little Greg Vanney talking today. So here's my big concern. With Victor Vasquez out, one of the main creators on this team, we've seen a lack of sort of creativity from the LA Galaxy in some ways. And so somebody needs to pick that up. And who's going to pick that up? A lot of times Chicharito dropping back can create some of those chances. I don't have a problem with that. Lots of people do. I'm fine with it as long as he still makes his runs. He usually does it. So it's somebody like Efrain Alvarez who is a creative sort of force on this. It's somebody like Douglas Costa, especially if you're thinking that Costa is going to start this game, which I think is probably a pretty good bet for all this. So, the problem, and Greg sort of mentioned it, with 5 in the back, and we've seen the Galaxy struggle in low block defenses, trying to create and move around those defenses. Orlando did it to them. Seattle did it to them. Chicago did it to them as well, is sort of how to break down these guys. And a lot of times the horizontal passing, which Vanney likes because it opens up vertical spaces and things like that. Well, this Galaxy team sometimes fails to create on those vertical chances. And so that's going to be the big thing for me, is who's going to create and who's going to take the ball vertical and be able to get in behind defenses. Grant Suhr is definitely a target with his speed and his ability Kostup's probably going to cut more inside like he likes to do and try to create from that sort of more central role whenever he goes in, which means that Julian Araujo will have a wing to sort of run on the right-hand side as well. So there's these things that the Galaxy are going to have to do, but breaking down a 5-man back line, trying to catch Nashville in transition, which is hard to do. And then Mike Gray talked about it in our chat room, and I think he's 100% right. Mike does a great job. I think he was out there training today asking questions as well today too. But Mike says, Nashville's susceptible on set pieces. It's one of their weaknesses. And so can the Galaxy capitalize on set pieces? They have it very much this year, but can they?
What happened to Ryan Revelis in the set piece header wonder? Let's get him in there.
The flashing, I don't know. That was the beginning of last year, and all of a sudden it was like, oh man, this Revelis guy, he can score goals, and then it's sort of been crickets since then.
Yeah.
Listen, Sega Koulibaly scored in the LAFC game. You need somebody else besides Chicharito to score, not just to take some pressure off of him, but also to open him up, which is if you have to worry about more than one guy. So that's really, listen, everybody's looking at Douglas Costa. He scored in the Chicago game. It didn't count. Chicharito scored in the Chicago game. It didn't count. They need guys to score. They need a Costa to score in this game especially. And the Galaxy have done really well in games where they score first. We know that. That is their biggest predictor of sort of success is scoring first. So that's important for them as well, is to make sure that Nashville isn't the one scoring first.
Absolutely. I like that because it definitely changes the way you play when you're not playing down.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's important here is going to be speed. Just how the LA Galaxy utilize it in a straight line fashion, how they use it in terms of play, passing, quick passes. Delgado, super important in that center of the field as well. So for me, it's a really interesting matchup because I want to see the Galaxy be able to break down that 5-man back line. But again, this is one that could go sideways, and that's sort of where I think everybody needs to understand how good Nashville is and sort of what they're good at, and they're good in transition, but they can still build up as well. Let's look at 538, by the way, has the LA Galaxy as the 4th best team in Major League Soccer right now, which is something different. We haven't seen that. And then we look at the match itself. The LA Galaxy heavily favored, 48% chance to win this match. Nashville with a 25% chance to win this match, just 27%. Excuse me, as a chance for a draw, 27% for a draw. So the Galaxy almost 50% favorites to get a win in this game. That's a lot. And even if you looked at MLS, Nashville is the heavy underdog in this game as well. On the road, traveling, Galaxy have played better. They are probably the better team. So, for me, I think the Galaxy get a win. I don't know that it's pretty, but I think they can get a win. Final thoughts on sort of Nashville and everything?
I think it has the makings of a good one, Josh, and I'm really excited, and I hope that the fans. I think it's been pretty good home attendance so far this season, and I hope that continues for Saturday night because, like you say, it's going to have the pomp and flair, and
right,
especially with some familiar faces intermingling, it'll be great, and I don't care if wins are pretty as long as they're fun. We want a battle out there. So that's all I'm asking for.
I heard limited tickets available, possible on another sellout for the LA Galaxy, and I think they sold out every home game so far this year. So it's right on the cusp there. So if you have friends, tell them to go to the game, so they can go to this game.
Come on.
That's right. The LA Galaxy, 7:30 p.m. on Saturday, April 23rd, against Nashville SC, coming to Dignity Health Sports Park for the very first time. Your TV time, your TV station is going to be Spectrum SportsNet. If you can't watch it on Spectrum, you're going to get it on LAGalaxy.com as well.
You can watch it on Spectrum.
I know, but it's still you guys though on LAGalaxy.com. They take that feed.
Oh, it is?
Yes. It's
okay.
you guys. Yeah. Trust me, they didn't have some other team out there like broadcasting team do it. So they take yours.
I'm not a narcissist.
No.
I just want as many fans to become acquainted with our storytelling too, right? Kobe and Joe are fantastic.
Amazing, and you all do a wonderful job, and that's always been great for that. My issues with Spectrum are completely different than the talent that you guys have, and that. I've expressed
Josh.
that too.
I ate one of his pupusas one time. Don't let anybody tell
that was it. Personal. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. So you steal one of my pupusas. If I don't get a hat, it will be personal. I will pay for the hat. I just need a pupusa hat, please.
Yeah.
Most important thing to come on Saturday for me. Absolutely. All right. I think that about does it. LA Galaxy versus Nashville SC coming up on Saturday, 7:38 kickoff time, Spectrum SportsNet, LAGalaxy.com. Nikki, anything else that you want to talk about? Are we good?
Thank you so much for having me on, and I'm going to demand to be on more throughout this season. I had so much fun listening to this podcast, all the personalities, all the takes, and I'm honored to be here, and it's going to be a really fun season. I'm excited.
It very well should be. All right, Nikki, tell people where they can find you, and we'll get on out of here.
On Instagram, I'm lil.nikki.k. Same on TikTok, working on the TikTok game, but a lot of Galaxy content coming your way. And Twitter, Nikki Kay, SN1 for Spectrum News 1. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Nikki, for coming on.
Say hi to me at games, please. I love that.
Yeah, wave to Nikki. She's nice. I got to meet her in person for the first time 2 weeks ago. So even though we talk a whole bunch and do all that stuff. So for sure, follow Nikki on Instagram, do all that stuff. Twitter, TikTok, all that fun things. Make sure you do that. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. CorneroftheGalaxy.com. You can find all of our articles, all of our videos, podcasts, anything that we have, press conferences. All that stuff gets thrown up there on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Like the video, subscribe, go to podcasts, subscribe there, tell your friends, tell your family, all that stuff. We'll see you out at the game on Saturday. For Miss Nikki Kay, I'm Josh Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.